Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Book Slump Extra. I am your host, Jules. I hope that you are well. I have had an interesting week. I hope you have had a great week too. We're going to be talking a little bit about something very interesting today. But before we get into that, let me introduce myself properly. I am an author of dark fantasy and science fantasy and Dungeons and Dragons, sword and sorcery, and all that kind of jazz. I also run this, and I also do a Discord server as well, which is specifically for writers, readers, beta readers, and people who are interested in books. I also do a little bit of publishing on the side as well, dabble a little bit into that. So I'm just going to go straight in. We're going to get Adam straight into the stream. Let's go.
Hello. How are you today?
Hi, Adam. How you doing?
Great. So, I'm Adam Andrews Johnson. I write horror. I've got a whole series of books. The first 3 in the Mantis variant series are released. It's dystopian, people hunting each other. It's lots of good stuff. So, and I'm excited to be here this afternoon.
I love it. Okay. I'm just going to go straight into it. This is what we're doing.
I love it.
So, a little bit of spice, Adam. What does that mean, do you think? What does that word conjure up in your imagination?
I think for most people, it goes straight to like the smutty erotica stuff. But I think we also use that term to describe details. As writers, we're adding spice to our story. We're adding more detail, more creativity, more whatever. We're adding more flavor to what we're telling. The starting end, my other book that you're releasing that's coming out next year with your publishing company is all smutty stuff. It's super sexy and naughty. But my other book is not. It just, I think that we all write to our level of sexiness, but you can still add tons of spice to your work without it being erotic. I think that you can add tons of flavor. Yeah. What about you? What does spice mean to you?
Oh, it's interesting because I'm not an erotic author at all. And I know we've talked about it before. I find my writing style doesn't lend itself to that aspect so much. It tends to be more focused on the subtle. So my spice is more to do with what's not being said. So I give vague descriptions of what is kind of going on between characters, but the rest is down to the reader to interpret for themselves as to how far that person goes. I think you're right. I think spice can mean smut or erotica type aspects of things, but I think it can also be pure romance or a scene between the characters where there's tension. So, for example, in Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, when you've got her, Elizabeth Bennet, visiting Darcy's home for the very first time, and she talks to the housekeeper about how wonderful Mr. Darcy is, and she's looking around at his beautiful home and his beautifully kept gardens, but they're not kept like the typical Georgian way. They're kept in like this rugged, natural way, which she absolutely loves. I think that's spicy because we get to really have an understanding of actually she really does like him. And then you've got several dance scenes in there as well where during the Georgian period they would spend a lot of time talking to their dance partner, and there's a scene where she dances with him. And it's not the first time she dances with him when she's quite like annoyed with him, but the second time. And there's a lot of tension going on between them, and there's lots of heavy sexual tension going on. And Jane Austen doesn't write.
All implied. Yeah, she doesn't write any. All implied. Yep.
Yes, completely implied. And I think that in itself can be just as dramatic, just as powerful as having the overtly explicit stuff out there too. So I think for me, it kind of ranges, across different stories, and it ranges from that real subtleness to, full-on erotica. And I think each book, I think if you added erotica to Pride and Prejudice, we'd have a very interesting take on it. I'm not. Oh, could be done, I suppose. But it would change the dynamics of the book, and it would change the kind of desire to see Darcy and Elizabeth get together again, or to get together.
It's like the relationship of Scully and Mulder in X-Files. Everybody wanted them to get together, and of course.
Absolutely. So I do think that I think the spice that you have in each novel needs to reflect that novel specifically, rather than just be an overarching term. But I quite like it because it does conjure up quite a lot of different ideas and images in people's minds. I think depending on what you're into, depending on what you're going for, I think that there's different levels of spice that you can access.
I think everybody has a different comfort level with it also. Not everybody wants to read erotica, but some people want to read spicy romance or whatever. And I think that applies to us authors as well. We write what's comfortable to us. That maybe, like you said, your books don't necessarily lend to the erotica side of things, but you may write a story someday that you're experimenting with something different, and a completely separate story in a completely different world may call for that, and may make you, lead you down a path that you weren't expecting. And I think that's awesome also. I wasn't expecting to write this nightmare horror book after writing all that stuff about like queer romance and the celebration of kinks in the queer community. Yeah, I did not expect to write horror. And then it just exploded out of me. So yeah.
I'll keep the smut to myself.
You've been innuendo all day long today.
I think I'm going to enjoy today just because of that. So, in terms of your writing style when you're writing erotica or spice, how does it change? Does it change? Does it kind of have to adapt to the way that you're writing it?
Well, I think in the starting end, in my book that's coming out next year, the erotica evolves through the story. The story is definitely taken. It's in third person perspective, but you're really following one character through most of the starting end, and it's his coming to terms with who he is and realizing at the very end of the story that he's non-binary and he goes by they them at the end. But for the whole time, as he's trying to figure out his sort of male versus femaleness and all these other things, he meets people who are a much broader spectrum, and it develops. He has the spice right off the bat is pretty kinky, but it's I think I
love the fact that you're even struggling to explain it.
Well, I think that like at the beginning it's more like understandable stuff, and then as you get further into the book, it's way out there stuff that most square people have never heard about before. So yeah.
Well, I can tell you now that my editor is thoroughly enjoying it. So she's I met up with her a couple of weeks ago. She's on holiday at the moment, but I met up with her a couple of weeks ago, and she had nothing but good things to say about it.
Oh, good.
She is thoroughly enjoying it. She's working her way through it slowly, little bit. But yeah, all right. So should we move on to the next wonderful bit of our show and do this?
Lovely.
And sweet. All right, so should we invite our guest authors on?
Let's bring everybody on. Yeah.
Bring them on. Okay.
Hello. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi. Have I got everyone? Is everyone on? Yes. Hey, I managed it.
And make sure you unmute yourself, because there's times when you automatically mute. Perfect. There we go. Oh, and if you're listening on your phone or another device, it down, or we're gonna
Hang on, I'm just muting everyone just for a moment. Just say that again for me so that we can hear.
If you're listening on YouTube on your phone or on one of the other apps where we're streaming, make sure you turn the volume down on your phone, or we're gonna end up with a kooky echo. So yeah, but all good. I've got my phone going, I've got my YouTube going, so I can comment along. But yeah, just have the volume all the way down. Okay, so let's one at a time introduce ourselves. Zelda, you've been on the show before. Uh-oh. We still. I think we're okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh. Oh,
someone's.
Sorry, everybody. Okay, we're figuring it out. Hold on. We got a glitch happening.
It sounds like it's a little bit better now. Okay. Well, so whilst we have that slight interlude, I'll just remind everyone that we are live at the moment on Facebook and YouTube and also Twitter, and but we're also going to be recorded. So if you want to watch back on this, you can. It'd be awesome to help grow our community and become part of our writing community in whatever capacity you feel you belong. Most people do feel like they belong in a writing community of sorts. So come along, share the love, and like us and subscribe. All right, pitch over.
All right, yeah, Zelda, would you like to go first? You've been here before. You've joined us. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your work, where we can get it, what the names of any available books are. Yeah, great.
Okay, hello. Glad to be back. First time was so much fun. My name is Zelda Seathorn, and I have a website at zeldaseathorn.com, and I write short stories, mainly fantasy, a little bit of science fiction, and some contemporary stuff as well, depending on my mood. And I'm working on a novel at the moment, which, I'm in the middle of it, and it's taken some time. I've had to rewrite a lot of it as you go, as you do. That's it.
Lovely. We're so glad you're here today. Thank you so much. Rose, would you like to go next? Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work and where we can get it if it's available?
Yeah, I'm Rose Black. I write queer adult fantasy, and my debut is out from Hodescape in November, which is Till Death Do Us Bard, which is the story of a guy who has settled down with his husband. He's retired from adventuring, and then his husband goes missing, and he's forced to work with a necromancer grandmother and the ghost of his ex-wife to try and find his husband again. And it's a kind of slightly comedy, second world fantasy.
How exciting! The ghost of his ex-wife gets involved, and he's
awesome. Or drama.
I love that. No, I've got a gay couple who an ex-wife turns up and wait, he wasn't always gay. And I love that little twist of things. That's great. Awesome. Katie and is Alley-oop? Is it Alley-oop?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Alley-oop or Ali. Yeah, Katie, go ahead.
Okay, Katie, why don't you go first?
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Katie Hay. I'm currently pitching my. Oh no, I've got the one cover. Let's have a proper cover. Assassin, which is my soulmates and assassins. It's there in the title. I write basically it's romantic fantasy. I have been writing young adult and recently segued into adult. This is a male series, and I'm having terrific fun with it. I love my characters. It's real. I've got fish out of water. I've got assassins who can't quite do their jobs. A handsome prince thrown in there. And I'm just coming to the end of edits on book 5, and it's finally coming together with a lovely ending for this pair. So that's me at the moment. Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Wow, a lot of books. That's exciting.
Yeah, and I'm Ali. I'm in Miami in the US and originally from Argentina. I am an artist and entrepreneur and coming into the writing world. I'm working on a sci-fi novel. I'm on the 3rd draft and a graphic novel. I do both. I draw and I write and do animation. And here I am.
Well, welcome everybody.
All right. I think.
Oh. Let's have an echo. Hold on. I'm gonna figure this out. Okay.
All right. I think that's. Ali, I think what we're going to have to do, because I think it's coming from your end, we'll just mute you until you're on. Is that all right? And if you want to say something, then if you can just unmute yourself. Because otherwise we're going to have lots of feedback.
we're international. I'm on the West Coast. We've got people on the East Coast. We have people in the UK. We are all over the place. So occasionally we get little glitches and stuff happens. So we just try and make it work, So.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Well, welcome everybody to the show. So this topic that we're talking about today was actually chosen in our Discord server. I kind of posted out a selection of different topics, and this was the one that people wanted. So this is the one we've gone for. Adam will.
I will say. She put an eggplant emoji next to which one we wanted to discuss, and all of us put the eggplant emoji. I mean, that's just what happened. So of course, that's what we did. Went right to it.
So when we're talking about spice, we're talking about lots of different types of levels of spice. It doesn't have to be anything really raunchy or anything like that. It can just be a build up between 2 characters or 3 characters or however many who happen to sort of have some sort of emotional tension going on between them. And it definitely doesn't have to be anything sexual at all. I think part of this is to do with how people's arcs go in stories, as well as how the story arc itself goes as well. So I think a lot of the Discord members wanted to find that out. They wanted to find out, how do other authors and how do we incorporate that in our stories, and how can we make it interesting for ourselves and also the readers. Okay, so let's go to do our sort of general conversation about it. So this is an open discussion to everybody, open questions. You can all join in whenever you want. Feel free to say what you like. In terms of spicy, what does spicy mean to you?
I think it generally is that you kind of think it's smart. But that's not. I think the discussion you're having earlier was quite interesting, because using the word spice is it can lead to other things. So, like spice in food. So, one thing that occurs to me is that every book and all the characters are going to have their own level that they're comfortable with. So, some books will kind of want to be spicier than others. And if you put too much spice in your korma, you haven't got any korma anymore, have you? You've got something completely different. So, the right amount of spice for the right characters is my thing. So as well as what do you want to eat that particular day, or what do you want to read that
analogy. The food. Brilliant.
Perfect. Love it. Anybody else? Oh, hang on, Ali, I think, are you talking?
Sorry. Yes. Sorry, I thought I was unmuted. To me, it's more of about the Powerpuff Girls and that how they were created. And spice was like the secret ingredient. It's like that secret thing, like the secret sauce that it's just is that magic that has something that it's just is wonderful. Like it makes it the eat thing. To me, that's what spice means.
I love the fact that you girls. That's so cool. Because I used to watch that years ago, and I when you said that, I remember.
Well, I used to work at Cartoon Network, so I used to work in the Powerpuff Girls show. So for me, they are home. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you do the art?
I do all of the promotions and all of the graphics and animations for the websites. Video games. I did a bunch of video games, like the Powerpuff Girls playing soccer, all kinds of things. Like a lot of things that you can do with the characters. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Wow. I like the fact that you've both of you have taken the word spice and sort of switched it around, so it's not just to do with smut or erotica, and that's exactly what spice means different things to different people, and I think that's perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. What about you, Rose or Zelda?
I've only really ever thought of it as sort of smut and things, but it is quite interesting to see the different takes on it, and I think that makes a lot of sense. So I tend to write. The characters, they're active, but it's fade to black scenes, so you leave it on and leave the rest of the reader's imagination. But yeah, I tend to write sort of fairly sweet stuff and leave the smuttier bits rather than the spicier bits to hopefully to fit that fan fiction.
I think that's perfect. I think that the levels of storytelling, of intensity of whatever the thing is that we're talking about, whether it's horror or smut, I think there are appropriate levels for all of it. And I almost think of the milder romance or the children's level horror as almost like gateway horror to get kids into. I read Bunnicula, the bunny rabbit
I love
when I was a little kid, right?
Yeah.
So I'm obsessed with horror as an adult, obviously.
Yeah.
It's just like one led to another.
Yeah.
Goosebumps and scary stories to tell in the dark. All those books that are like 13-year-old led up to the darker stuff.
Christopher Pike was my gateway, I think.
Yes.
I used to read Christopher Pike.
To me, it does have like the sexual entendre like connotation, but also it has, to me, the humor. I use it in my novel in very humorous scenes where my genre is superhero. So the master of my main character, he only speaks in questions. So the conversations that my main character has, she's like horribly frustrated with her master, right? Because he is impossible, absolutely impossible. And I had the best time writing that character. Like, that's my favorite of all time. And the situations, they are very spicy, but they are very spicy in a humorous way and in a loving way, and also in a deep way. Like, spice can also deal to, like, get you to a level of depth that no words do it, right? That is this tension that goes, that it builds, it's almost cinematic. Like, you almost see the tension that is what's happening, and the air, like, just heavy around these two characters. And when they are speaking, I think when like we're adding that spice to it, like the characters kind of come alive, like they become three-dimensional. That's my take on it.
Love it. It's I think it's really cool when you have characters suddenly being brought to life on the paper, and the reader gets an opportunity to have a window into, what they're thinking. And even if it kind of fades to black and the reader's left wondering or having to use their own imagination, I think it's a great way of getting the reader fully invested in those characters.
It's almost like a wink, like your wink, like that wink to the reader, right? It's like it's beyond words. I love that you chose spice as the theme today. I hadn't thought about it like with in depth like this, and it's I'm gonna use it on the book in some way, the same way that the Powerpuff Girls had like sugar and spice and everything nice. There is I think that there is. It is a beautiful way to describe a book, that it has that spice. I think it's a very beautiful thing. That I would totally buy a book that has that word in the description.
Interesting.
Well, I think that we've talked about when we create character. I think it's great in all books that when the characters are really, really unique and distinct, and they each have their own very separate voice. So while the reader is going through, they're not getting confused by people. It's not getting muddled. And I think that's true. That you've got all. It's like Katie was saying about the korma. You've got all these different spices, all the different flavors that come together to make an Indian dish or whatever kind of food we're talking about. And if it's way out of balance, if there's something if something's not right, then it's not going to be good. Or if it's way too low and everybody's too similar, all the characters are too similar. Yeah, it's not going to be as strong. It's just to that point where I like to think of the characters are right as slightly over the top, and then I dial them back just a little bit. I pull them back just a hair, but I make them characters. Yeah,
they're very flamboyant characters in the start and end, and I think that it really reflects well on the story itself. And I think the story is flamboyant. So the sort of the spice that happens in that book matches the style of that narrative. If I placed that style in my dark fantasy, which is has no actual like massive descriptions in terms of sexual scenes or anything like that, I think I used the word breast for the first time in book 3. I think it would kind of make the book become something different, and it would change the impact of the story itself. So I think that it does bear relevance to the story that it's been written in and the characters that you've got. So like if I put my main character in some of the positions that are in your book, I think again it would kind of change the dynamics of what's going on in your story. So I
think that just the two words together of flamboyant horror, that I'm sold. What else can you want? I think it's awesome. I
love that, flamboyant horror. That's going to be a new one. I'm going to mull that over for a little while, see if I can come up with a little story to go along with that. I quite like that.
I might make a sign that says that for my tables.
That's a good idea. It's very true for the Mantis variant.
It is flamboyant as hell, that's for sure.
But that could class as the spice, couldn't it? That could be the actual spice itself. You don't need to have like sex scenes in it to have spicy stuff going on. Just the flamboyantness, is that a word? The flamboyant.
Flamboyancy?
The flamboyancy. Oh gosh, whatever, the flamboyant style in the story is the spice. So what do you think?
Oh well, I didn't know what the theme was. So spice, I guess, for me, it's all about the tension, isn't it, between the characters? So it doesn't matter how like erotic it is, because you can still have a lot of tension and a lot of that tingly feeling when you're reading, like, oh my god. I mean, I've read Jane Austen and there's no sex in there, but like someone drops a handkerchief and it's like, oh my god, no. And like he touches her hand when he gives it back to her, and you're like on the edge of your seat. Like it's intense because you know how much it means to those characters. It's a big deal. So I think if you get into the characters and what's important to them, then you can make anything feel spicy.
That's a great point. Adding stakes into it. Stakes are totally spicy. You're absolutely right about that. Yeah.
When they transferred the book for Pride and Prejudice into the TV series on the BBC in, I think it was like 1995 or something. There was this probably the spiciest scene ever when Mr. Darcy jumps in a lake to cool himself off because he's like, oh, Elizabeth. And all the women across the country were like swooning for him. Like he had a white shirt on and like, oh wow. And of course there's no sex scenes in it at all, but that was super spicy for the book. So yeah, I think it's it's a great way to kind of like balance it out, I think, when you go full erotica and then look at something like Jane Austen where there's just like it's a complete opposite. But
we gotta have it all. We gotta have the whole spectrum. Yep, we gotta have all of it.
Yeah, it doesn't detract from the story.
One time I went to some clients of mine. They are from India, and they invited us to their wedding. So it was our first wedding, going to an Indian wedding, and we were the only ones non-Indian, and the only ones. There were like 450 people there. It was gigantic. And then everybody protected us from the spice So we were in the line, like waiting for the food, and it's like, no, you cannot eat this, and then no, you cannot eat that. And what it made me think is that too much spice or kills your taste buds, right? Like too much of it is too much, and it kills everything. It kills the mood, it kills the character, it kills kind of the flow of the book. That you have to be also very careful and very thoughtful of how much of that spice you're gonna put in there, so it doesn't kill everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. That if you're going to write something intense on any level, whether it's violent and horror, gory type stuff, or if it's erotica, I think that if it fits into the story, then it's fine. I think that's why a lot of erotica authors just write little short stories about people having sex. It's not so much about a plot with characters. It's more about giving people exactly what they're looking for. And so, so I think that a lot of stories, like, for example, mine, that's got lots and lots of ridiculous sex all the way through it, I had to make it flow with the story. And I hope that I achieved that. The editor seems to think I've done that. And I think that you're right, that there's moments of downtime, shall we say, from where characters are learning and developing and figuring out themselves because of what they've gone through. And as long as it relates, then I think it works. But,
there's a couple of interesting comments in the comment section at the moment. I'm going to put them up on the screen. So we've got Damien says, Seapot scene in BBC showing ankles. What's really funny about that is during the Victorian and the Georgian period, particularly the Victorian period in England, women who showed their ankles, particularly in the middle classes, women weren't expected to work in the middle classes. Working classes, women worked. But if women showed their ankles, oh my good. And they used to dress the table legs and the chair legs of tables and chairs, to, like, put a wrap around to cover them, because they were seen as far too spicy and sexualized. So ankles were a big deal in the Victorian times.
what were people doing with chair legs back in the Victorian era?
I think the term was a leg.
But it's interesting because boobs was okay, like cleavage was okay, but not ankles.
Yeah. So
if you think about it, it's kind of ridiculous, right?
Yeah. I guess in what Damien's talking about is probably a period drama where showing ankles is, a bit of a taboo subject. But yeah, women who were prostitutes in the Georgian and Victorian times would definitely be showing their ankles. And obviously, cleavage was an absolutely okay thing to show. Thank you, Damien. And then we've also got one from Zander. So I'm going to put you up here as well, Zander. Zander says, absolutely, you have to be intentional about the relevant details. So they are talking specifically about it being relevant to each book. So depending on which book you're reading or writing, depends on how spicy or spiceless you want to have it. And again, the spice is in the details, isn't it? It depends on how you view spice. So if you view spice in one way, you write it in that.
There's also a piece about setting expectations and then fulfilling those expectations for your readers. So you kind of need to be, again, intentional about this is what this book is and this is what you're going to find within these pages. And so, if you're picking up a Jane Austen book, clearly you're going to get a flash of ankles and a waved fan and possibly a dropped handkerchief. Whereas something these days, you might get something super ultra eyeball melting hot, but it's knowing what you're going into and kind of fulfilling the bargain with the reader. So this is what I've provided, this is what you've picked up. Everybody's happy in this exchange.
Absolutely.
Yeah, marketing, how you present it is very important, because otherwise if people go in expecting one thing and get something else, that's where
you could be writing the best thing in the world, but it's still
it's not what they wanted,
because you've not actually done what you said you were going to do.
Yeah.
Totally. Just putting Xander's comment up here as well. It says they've leveled it. It's always like a sort of a computer game when you're having to go through up the levels, you know. You get to a certain level, you get certain skill points.
Nando's.
Yeah, Nando's. Oh god, I love Nando's. Plain, mild, spicy, super hot. Thank you. Thank
We
you,
all 4
Xander.
levels.
So they have that how many chilies ratings. Maybe we want to have how many aubergine ratings. And the eggplant ratings.
I love it. And Damien thinks that we should have a show an OnlyFans just for ankles. That would be super. There's already stuff to do with feet, isn't there? So we could start that. We could start ankles OnlyFans. All right. Okay, so let's move on to our next bit. So we're going to talk. We've done our talk today about our thoughts about spiciness and stuff, and I'm inviting all of our lovely guest authors the opportunity to do some readings from their work. It could be as spicy or as unspicy as you like. Please don't feel pressured to find the most spicy part of your book if you don't want to read it, but I'm happy for you to do this. So we're going to do this. Book Wizards for Bookworms. That's chosen by my son. So Book Wizards, we are the Book Wizards, and we're reading it for bookworms, people who devour books. So I don't mind who goes first. Adam, would you like to start it off with your spicy?
Yeah, all right.
You can see how spicy we're allowed to actually go.
I'll read a section that relates directly to what Katie was just saying a second ago about setting expectations. My books don't have any content warning, any content indicators, nothing like that at all, because the very first page lets you know exactly what you're getting into right off the bat. Yeah. So I'll read in my horror book, somebody gets murdered right away, and there's cannibalism, and it's all gruesome right off the bat. And so that's so you know what you're getting into with that one. But with my spicy book, it starts a little different because we're going to set the stage for spice. So I'm going to read from my computer. Here we go. So this is from my book, The Starting End, which is coming out next year with Jules' company, Danube Publishing from London. We're excited about that. And this chapter is chapter 1, On Waking Up. He awoke uncomfortable. The sun was shining through his eyelids, and he longed for a few more minutes of rest. Could it really be morning already? He barely remembered falling asleep, but he always found it difficult to remember drifting off in the same way that he had a hard time in the morning recalling what he dreamed each night before. He tightened his closed eyelids in defiance of the day. One of his arms was under him at an awkward angle, and his hand had the ringing tingle of pins and needles. Achingly wiggling his fingers, which felt like they were not properly attached, he realized his hand was not the only part of him that did not feel quite right. Did he forget to put away some object and inevitably fallen asleep with it still in his bed? It was poking into his hip. The discomfort now forced him to roll over, his eyes still sealed against the morning. But turning on his side only made things worse. Now his knee, his ankle, and his ribs were experiencing a significant amount of discomfort. His arm was no longer in a funny position and consequently caused the subsiding paresthesia. But the fact became abundantly clear. He was not comfortable. Shifting a little more and trying to find a better position for just another moment before sitting up and facing the day, the crushing reality of waking up was finally sinking into his bleary brain. And another thing. What in the world could possibly be on his pillow that felt so fluffy? With a final begrudging effort, he allowed his eyelids to open. From his perspective lying down, the world came into view sideways, and the sight was not what he was expecting. He pushed himself up and looked around. What kind of a night had he experienced? He closed his eyelids, hesitated for a breath, and opened them again. Yep, there could be no doubt about it. He was in a forest. It was not unpleasant and seemed familiar, but it was not what he was expecting to see, and he was profoundly surprised. The place he apparently chose to lie down the night before was relatively soft and flat, with a thick layer of clover having bedded him as decently as the cold ground could provide. It It made an unforgiving bed and was the culprit for his discomfort. There was a slight dampness in the dappled, dreary haze, dewy like the morning. A thin mist was hovering about the edges of the little clearing, and he gave a shudder. Gently massaging his temples, he closed his eyes again. Reopening them, he looked down at himself. On top of being alone in a forest, he was naked. And for no clear or apparent reason, he had an erection. And I'll stop there. Whee! Ta-da! I'll let you know exactly what's going on right out the door. First page, starting on where morning wood. And then he meets a man shortly after.
And it goes uphill from there.
Sure. You can describe it that way.
It's a nice opening, actually, because it does exactly what you say. It just lets you know what's going on straight away, but it also leaves the reader going, what? And makes you want to know more. So yeah, very good. So why did you choose to write that sort of style? Why did you choose to write erotica?
I knew I was writing an epic fantasy novel, and I knew it was going to be a celebration of queer kinks in particular. And I didn't want to do what, for example, the Lord of the Rings movies do, where in the first 15 seconds, you hear about a war that happened 3,000 years ago, and these different races of beings and all this stuff, and people are dying, and who's this ancient person? No, I didn't want any of that stuff at the beginning. I didn't want my reader to have to figure out and memorize. So you wake up the main character. He wakes up, he doesn't know where he is, and the reader doesn't know where they are. And so you learn with the reader about this magical world that he's in and go on this adventure, and he figures himself out, and he meets all these other people, and he spends time with some nudists, which there's almost no sex in that whole time, but everybody's just naked the whole time, so he feels awkward there. And then he goes to the city, and there's a sex parade. Well, no, it's actually a BDSM kink parade, and he gets confused with that. And then so it's just and then it just, like you said, goes uphill from there. So yeah, and it's 600 pages of celebration.
That absolutely sounds flamboyant. So
flamboyant, exactly.
Yeah.
Now you see why I had to snatch it up when I first heard it. Yeah, it definitely is a very exciting and very flamboyant journey. And your inspiration came from Discworld, didn't it?
Discworld, yeah. Terry Pratchett was my major influence on how to create a world that I wanted to be completely separate, isolated from the real world, from anything else. I wanted it to be completely unique. So it's a self-contained universe that time is not passing. Nobody's growing, nobody's aging, nobody can get sick, diseases can't progress, but also nobody can get pregnant, so babies can't be born because time isn't passing, so nobody's aging, so everybody's sort of stuck in this, and then it just, that leads to a lot of problems for people, and he has to sort of force his own growth, and that's the story. And there's some battle scenes and all sorts of, like, all the stuff that goes with epic fantasy novels, but lots of sex and naked people.
And it's not just missionary either.
Oh, we do all sorts of stuff in my books.
Just bringing that out.
So thanks for listening.
All right. You're very well. No, I thought it'd be nice to start with you because I think sometimes this is difficult for some people, and authors find it uncomfortable sometimes reading aloud to other people. And sometimes it's nice for us to be able to sort of say, this is the kind of thing that we do. You read as much as this podcast.
Yeah, this podcast is all about helping readers helping authors talk about their work, read from their work. It's just a practice to help us as authors encourage each other and stuff. I love it. Yep.
Absolutely. Here. All right. Okay. So, Zelda, did you want to go next? As you've been here before, so you kind of know the ropes a little bit, so you can kind of do a nice gentle ease in.
Yeah, I've picked something I wrote a while ago, but it's kind of as spicy as I go, really, at the moment. Okay, I'll start reading. Okay. I'll just introduce it. So a woman who's engaged to be married to a man has gone to get the flat to visit the florist where she is getting the flowers for the wedding. Okay. Selena's florist had been recommended by a friend. Nestled down a narrow country road not far from the village green, it boasted an expansive glass house and a wide variety of tropical flowers. Penny had been shocked to discover that it was within walking distance of her house. She'd never known it was there, but then again, why would she? She never bought flowers. The first time she'd gone, a little bell tinkling as she entered, she'd been mesmerized by Selina's passion and expertise. The woman moved like a dancer from one flowering plant to another, examining, touching, pruning as she went, all the while asking Penny what she liked, what flowers, colours, smells, textures. Penny hadn't realised it would be this so complicated. What do people usually get for their weddings? Roses? She had asked. This question had earned her a withering look. A wedding should be personal, Selina had said. Each element tailored to fit those there to give themselves to each other. There is no usual. Despite feeling chided, Penny stayed, drinking in the vibrant colours, strolling along the rows of exotic rainforest plant life, or what she assumed was such. Sweat pricked her skin as she found the back of the greenhouse and a door marked with white skull and crossbones like a pirate flag. It hadn't been locked. Inside, the air was less thick and heavy, but warm. On the left, ivy wound its way up a trellis, and she could see some white flowers blooming further down. The entire right side was occupied by a plant with long, thin branches and smooth leaves. It was festooned with purple, bell-shaped flowers and cherries. She reached out. "Don't touch them!" Selina was suddenly behind her. "Didn't you see the sign? They're highly poisonous. The slightest touch will irritate your skin." "What are they?" "A trope of belladonna, more commonly known as deadly nightshade. It's what Macbeth used to poison Duncan's army." "Oh, right," she said. She knew Macbeth was Shakespeare, but who was Duncan? She decided not to ask. Why do you have them?" Selina ushered her out of the room and closed the door, her smooth skin brushing against Penny's, and pointed her towards some roses. "They're not poisonous for all animals. Rabbits and cows can eat them, for example, and they have medicinal properties." "Ah." Penny looked at the roses. They were a safe option. Everyone knew roses meant love. Tulips meant death. "Does deadly nightshade have a symbolic meaning?" Selina raised an eyebrow. She was standing close, her coconut scent seeping into the humid air. Danger and betrayal. Penny should never have gone back, but the greenhouse beckoned to her like a siren, and a part of her longed to fling herself into the swell. At first, it was nothing. An accidental touch, a brushing of fingertips against bare skin. But it didn't stop there. She couldn't be sure who had started it, but how exactly it happened, but happen it did. Selina's sweat slaked skin pressed up against hers beneath the thick fronds of a jungle fern. Right at the back of the greenhouse, words were thrust aside for breathless moans. "When are you going to tell him?" Selina had asked one day. "Nicholas?" The thought had never occurred to her. This was just a final passionate tryst, wasn't it? "Yes, unless you have anyone else who thinks you're marrying them." The silence had drawn out until Selina propped herself up on one elbow. "You are going to tell him, aren't you?" Selina had gritted her teeth before asking quietly, "What do you think this is?" Penny had dumped people before. She expected crying, anger, bartering, maybe even threatening to tell Nicholas. But she hadn't been prepared for Selina's reaction. Cold, implacable stillness, like a lake, harbouring something horrible beneath the surface. She had searched for the ripples and seen none, but she knew it was there. Okay, I'll stop there.
Absolutely lovely. Yay. Thank
That
you.
was fun. Yeah.
And way spicier than you made it out to be. It was totally like personal interconnections and like juicy. Oh yeah, no, and the cheatiness, it's all there.
Yeah, I completely agree. that because you've got noises that we can relate to. You've got closeness of people. You've got the kind of tension that's going on between them. That's definitely very spicy. Ooh, dropping papers on my dog. Yeah, so I agree with Adam. And I put up on the screen as well your links And I've also put up on the screen a comment that was by Damien, who loved your book cover. I'm going to put it up on the screen again. Would you mind holding your book up for people? Have you got it with you, Zelda, so that people can see it? You're muted.
I don't have a physical book because it's only on Kindle.
Don't worry.
But
That's all right.
I can hold that up.
Yeah, let's
let's do that.
Screen. Hang on. We like to show off everyone's books and their works that they've put their heart and soul into.
I like the cover.
Well, that's good. I think you're in trouble, aren't you, if you don't like a cover that you got on your book. Mind you, I have the problem with my ones at the moment. I'm having to redo my ones for the same reason. I actually don't like my covers, so mine are being redone. That noise in the background is my dog. In case everyone is wondering what that digging noise is. He likes to make his appearance.
Oh dear, there it is.
So I take your time.
God love tech.
Yeah, so I can come back to you, Zelda. That's all right. Don't want you to feel pressured or anything. It's absolutely cool. Take your time. We'll come back to you. Don't worry. Damien, we'll just have to wait. hold your knickers on, Damien. It'll be fine. We'll get back to her so you can show it. Now she's got it. Hang on a second. Let me just get you back up on the screen. Hang on a second.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh. I like that very much. That's very cool.
That's
So,
lovely.
It's a collection of fantasy and sci-fi stories.
That's cool.
And they're really good fun. I read the first one earlier today and really liked it. I love that comment about potato milk made me laugh.
Oh, yes.
That's kind of adding more spice than possibly is necessary to this, but I wonder now what the potato spice is, what potato milk is all about. So that's cool. It's going to intrigue all our listeners to wonder what that is.
Right.
Maybe get them to read your book. That'd be cool. All right. Okay. Katie, did you want to do some reading next?
Yeah, I will read a little bit from Assassin. Here we go. Just so you know the names that are coming up in the extract, Kit is our assassin. He's been sent to kill Prince Talal. He's also known as the Emir Talal and His Blessed Highness. Kit is ostensibly gone to celebrate the prince's birthday, but he's actually there to kill him. They've had the kind of formal meeting when they've been introduced. Kit was taken aback by how attractive he found Talal, but it's okay. He knows the man is a heretic and probably a sorcerer, so it's all down to that. There was also been a formal feast, and Kit is now preparing for bed. Kit waited for the snap of the door and sank to his knees in front of the window for the night's prayers. When he closed his eyes, a pair that were fathomlessly dark filled his vision. He did his best to push them from his mind and prayed to the Almighty for guidance and strength and opportunity. He hoped he could find a way to push the man down steps or off a balcony. He would admit to no one, certainly not to his companion Sylvan, but he was very afraid that if he had to look into those depthless eyes while he killed the prince, his courage might fail him, and that was truly unthinkable. Kit had barely finished the recitation of his prayers when a movement in the moonlight outside caught his attention. He peered out, fingers gripping the window ledge. A grey shape moved at the corner of his eye. A cat prowling across the path, each paw carefully set in place as it ventured through the undergrowth. Kit watched until the creature slunk out of sight. He should find his bed, but he was wide awake. He had a sudden urge to see where the animal had got to. Cats belonged in the kitchen, but the beasts roamed where they chose, beholden to no one. Pausing only long enough to tug a robe over his sleep tunic, Kit swung over the windowsill and took a deep breath of cool night air. He followed the path the cat had taken between a pair of leafy bushes. Breaking into a small clearing, he started back. A man knelt with his back to Kit. The Emir Talal. Kit's heart pounded. For the briefest moment, he was sure the Emir had sprung from the cat, and a dread of sorcery pounded through his veins. Then he saw the cat was also there, the Emir extending a hand to stroke the arched back. "Lass, have you come to say your prayers?" Or just to distract me from mine, the man mused. Kit's heart thumped. The Emir had his back turned, ignorant of his presence. This was the perfect opportunity. If only he had a knife, he could slip it between the man's ribs and be done with the matter. He didn't have a blade. Everything of that nature had been surrendered on their arrival at the palace. He could perhaps hack the man's head from his shoulders with his eating knife, but he didn't even have that to hand, and the Emir was unlikely to stay patiently still for long enough for that tactic to bear fruit. Saint knew the situation wasn't funny, but Kit perhaps made some sound of mirth. Prince Talal glanced around. His eyes lit up when he saw Kit, the gesture like a punch to his chest. Ah, welcome. Forgive me, Blessed Highness, he waved a hand. I followed the cat. He bowed. I'll leave you to your prayers. He spoke the words, but made no move to retreat. He was trying to find a way to fulfill his duty, he told himself, because it would be absurd to suggest the slight smile playing around the Emir's lips was holding him in place. The Emir turned to the cat. It seems I must thank you for bringing me company, lass. I didn't mean to disturb you. He could throttle the man, a voice pointed out deep in Kit's mind. His hands flexed, but still he made no move. I'm not disturbed. The prince waved a hand hospitably. Please, sit with me a while. Kit sank down, glancing around. Perhaps there was a rock close by that he could use to smash the Emir's skull. He saw nothing useful. The cat lifted its tail like a flag and stalked off. Ah, alone. A shiver tickled the back of Kit's neck when the Emir spoke. The other man smiled, and he couldn't tear his eyes away from the white teeth displayed between deep pink lips. He should say something, but his head was empty of words. Perhaps he could appear more suspicious if he tried, but that idea seemed unlikely. Your gardens are beautiful, he managed in the end, wincing at the commonplace. The Emir smiled. He tipped his head to the sky, his face illuminated by the waxing moon overhead, eclipsing the pale light of the lantern beside him. Do you know, he turned suddenly, fixing Kit with his dark stare. In some parts of the land, it's believed that if you sit outside on the full moon closest to midsummer, a mirror will show you the face of your soulmate, if you have one. Kit scoffed. Superstitious nonsense. His sense caught up with him and he could have bitten his tongue off. It was superstitious nonsense, but it was a clumsy insult to point that out to the Emir of the country where such nonsense was rife. The prince jabbed a finger at Kit, his smile swelling like an ocean tide. Exactly. And unscientific, too. What could a mirror possibly show you save your own face? It's ridiculous. He lifted a shoulder, the silk of his robe whispering in the quiet air. But not many expect to see someone else's face. Soulmates are rare. Soulmates are a silly myth. Fortunately, Kit managed to keep that opinion between his teeth. My great-grandparents were soulmates, the Emir continued, his tone low but sincere, sharing a confidence but not a secret. His lips curved in amusement. He was a beggar in the market. The Sultana spotted him as she rode past on her way to the temple. Their rule was famed for the peace and prosperity they brought the land. Kit made a non-committal sound. He'd read the history, although it had been presented somewhat differently in his books. The Sultana had been a foolish, impressionable girl, easily swayed by a handsome face, while her advisors lacked the balls to guide her to a more appropriate consort. The royal family is lucky. Soulmates occur more often for us than other families. The Emir's eyes sparkled, light gleamed on his smooth cheek, and Kit wanted to reach out and touch. He should be intending to strangle the man, but his fingers simply wanted to discover whether his skin was as soft as it looked. Sultan Bashar received a visitation from an angel on my 2nd birthday. The angel told him I was destined to find my soulmate. The Emir sighed, his tone fond, or perhaps amused. Kit just managed to prevent his lip from curling. The foolish man had had a dream and decided he wanted it to be true. The Emir continued. There could be no doubt the Sultan would choose me for his heir after that. Kit hadn't heard that reasoning behind the Emir's status, or perhaps his father had chosen not to tell him. Children's bedtime stories had no place in the affairs of men, after all. My mother, the Emir continued, is said to have fainted when she heard the news. He made a gesture Kit couldn't interpret. She denies it. I've never known her to be overwhelmed. It makes a good story, though. Well, truth is a slippery thing. Silence fell. Something twisted in Kit's chest. A final reminder of his failing duty, perhaps. He was sitting here, talking to the man, when he should be striking him down. What his father would say if he could see him like this. He glanced back to the palace. Never mind his father. He should be more concerned with what Sylvain might do if he learned of it. The man was as much spy as companion. Kit sighed, frustrated with himself as well as with the man sitting opposite him, with no awareness of the danger he was in. Why are you telling me all this about soulmates? The Emir met his eyes steadily and gave Kit the most genial smile he'd ever been the recipient of. Because I believe you are my soulmate. Da, da, da.
That's the way to leave us off. Yep.
I did actually wonder partway through, so I wonder where this is headed, like between the two of them. You know, how are they?
He's going to be the soulmate. He's going to be the soulmate. He has to be. I can feel it already. Yep. Nope.
Yep.
Awesome. Yep.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing.
And the writing was so smooth, really, really tight writing, where I feel like a lot of authors struggle with synonyms, and there's repetition that's unnecessary in a lot of books. And I felt like every time you were talking about how he's going to attack the man he's supposed to be killing, it was a different description. Every single time it was a little different, and I applaud you at that. That is
excellent. Thank you. And thank you to my beta readers for pointing out. You've used this word 8 times in this paragraph.
Yes, that's an important step. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anyone who's struggling to find beta readers, if you don't know what a term beta readers is, it's basically people who will it's a bit like with computer games as well. Well, they'll kind of road test your book a little bit. They'll read parts of it or chapters, and they'll give you guidance as to where they think it's kind of needing adjustments and tweaks and things like that. So useful.
Someone who reads the book before it's been released.
Yes.
That has a major thing to do with it. That before you let it out, before you're done with the editing process, you get these folks to read it, and they give you feedback, whatever. Yep. But
yeah.
We just lost Ellie. I hope they come back okay.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Okay. So they are an important part of it. So I'm sure that we're all here familiar with the term, but obviously not everyone out there is. So, but we do find it difficult to find beta readers, and I think that's part of the difficulty of writing, isn't it? Where you're trying to find where you can get these information from, of where you can find these people. So
it's finding people, and it's also kind of finding the right people. So they need to tell you what's wrong with it, but they need not to hit you with a big stick when you're feeling vulnerable. So kind of people that so they understand what you were trying to achieve with the book, and don't go, oh well, I think you should have written an entirely different book, and here's how you should have done it. But will help you get your vision out to the reader.
It's like a peer review, isn't it? You know, if you've got a peer review, you've got someone who's putting a critical eye over what you've written and what you've done, but it's done in a fair and concise and a way that's going to actually meet your book, your style of writing. There's no point in having a beta reader who has no idea about high fantasy, and they're reading a high fantasy book, but they can't tell you what is, because high fantasy is very precise with what requires, what the requirements are for it. So it is about finding the right people. Anyway, okay, let's move on. All right, Rose or Ali, which one of you would you like to go next? I don't mind, either of you. You can fight it out.
I'll go next unless
go for it.
So
there we go.
This is a little section from Till Death Do Us Part, and at the beginning of the book, Logan and his husband Pi are married, but there are little interludes that happen throughout the story that show how they meet and how their relationship progresses, and this is the first time that they, just before they get together with each other. So it's about 14 months before the story starts. Logan drained the last of his drink and slammed down the tankard. Right, he was going to do it. Neither gods nor man could stop him now. Pie stood in the corner, showing the barmaid sleight of hand tricks. A gold coin flashed across his knuckles and then vanished from sight. Pie held out his empty hands and she gasped in delight. Logan had to move now or he'd lose his chance. The back of his neck itched as he stood, the confidence of several pints sliding over his shoulders. Logan fought to hold on to it. After his marriage had ended, there'd been numerous one-night stand events, a bit of meaningless fun to warm the bed and nothing to leave them attached in the morning. As Logan got older and grumpier and more set in his ways, they'd become few and far between. But why shouldn't he? At least he knew now Pie was interested. He wasn't quite sure what to say to make the barmaid go away, but fortunately Pie spotted him first and headed over. Logan's heart leapt into his throat. "So," Logan said as the bard approached, "you still want to seduce me, right?" Immediately his ears burned and he wanted the floor to swallow him up. That was smooth. Pie grinned. "You don't waste words, do you?" He put a hand on Logan's shoulder and the smile slipped a little. "I do, definitely, but..." Logan's heart sank. He'd left it far too late after all. He tried to turn away, but Pie didn't release his grip. "Hear me out. Last time you were pretty clear. What if this is the beer talking and tomorrow you'll wake up and think differently?" Logan shook his head. "It ain't the beer. I just want to make sure that you're sure." He leaned in close and Logan noticed for the first time that Pie's eyes were both green and brown. "I've been many people's bad ideas. I don't want to be anyone's regret." "Well, what do you want me to do? Stand on one leg, sing a song?" Frustration put a hard edge to his voice. "What will convince you that this isn't the beer talking, that I want this?" He lowered his voice. "Want you." "Tell me what's different this time." The bard rested his hip against the table and Logan tried not to focus on the way Pie's loosely laced shirt revealed his collarbone. "Last time you surprised me. Didn't give me the opportunity to think. This time, he stumbled over the words, much harder to harness some feelings. "I did good today. Saved those children. They went home to their families happy. Why shouldn't I get to be happy sometime too?" Pie's eyes widened and so did his smile. He put his hand on Logan's cheek, drawing Logan's lips to his. He wore a citrusy scent that drove Logan's senses wild. "Well, in that case, you've absolutely come to the right place." Pie took his hand and pulled him towards the stairs. "Happy endings are my specialty."
Love it. That's fun.
And they're into each other. I love. Yep. Oh. Mm-hmm.
I like it. I like the fact that everyone's like what you're all reading is so unique to your stories, but also adds that intrigue and the sort of mysticism that's going on between the characters. I like it. I like the spice. It's very good. So, in terms of, have you got any links or anything, Rose, that go to your book?
Yeah, I put one in the chat, which takes you to the Hatchet website.
I couldn't find it, but it's fine. Stick it in the chat again, and then I will happily share that.
Let me give you the Goodreads link. 1 second.
Oh, perfect. Because I always like to sort of show off all of our authors, because that's why you're here, isn't it? To to introduce people to your books who haven't read them already, and to also, maybe see something that you like and buy.
Rose, I'd like to say I make mention of collarbones at one point in my book, also with a gentleman with lovely collarbones. So I feel around that. Yeah.
No, when you said the guy, I was like, oh yeah, collarbones are really sexy, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're down to Ali. Are you okay to do?
I am. Can you hear me good? Can you hear me good? Yes. Is this better than the other one?
Perfect.
Oh, good. So this is chapter 1. It's actually new. I changed 4 times my chapter 1 in my novel. And this is, I went back to the first one that I had. So this is what it is like in 3rd draft. I can't wait to finish this thing and be done with chapter 1. So it's called My Life Design. The book is called actually Entropic, and this is the cover that we've been working on. Let me see where I see it here. It's a world uncertain, and that's the main character. It starts, and I'm gonna read slow because of my accent. Tell me if I should repeat something, okay? So, Laver said, Breakfast, now, said Kiki, clearly fed up with my morning bullshit. I knew she thought that if she felt good about sending me to live with someone else, she would. But I knew that she wouldn't send me away, so I kept being me. I became a pain in the ass when I turned a teenager, but I couldn't control it. I was who I was, and she had to deal with me as if she was my birth mother. 3, 2, said Kiki. I knew that what would happen if she got to number 1, so I threw my shoes on the floor, making a lot of noise so she would fuck off. Be it. In the tracks, if the tracks alarm sounded because I was late for the new school, well, it would. I want to go back to Sector 11. No more changes, I said. You hated that school, said Kiki. Look, my life track is showing both of my life paths. I said, looking at my 2 ghostly pink lines floating before me, ready to show me my 2 possible futures. It looks like they are being erased, said Kiki. My 2 possible futures were dissipating right before my eyes, bringing even more jitters to my situation. How can you stand there and do nothing? I screamed. Kiki's face was a mix of being sorry and fed up with the same story every time we moved. If I hooked onto the track on the left, it will show me the path to my old school. If I join the one on the right, I will go to a new school with my life track, where my life track designer decided it was a new thing for me. Your new future will show soon. Kiki sat next to me and hugged me. It's not fair. I shouldn't have to experience uncertainty. I am starting to feel that I will get traumatized. So I said, looking at the emptiness before me, pointing at her, at Kiki's glowing life track. Sorry. Look, your track even shows you having cereal in a smoothie, I said. How could her future be so well designed and ready for her, and mine wasn't even showing yet? What have we talked about? Kiki said, starting to the accept the change speech. I shouldn't have to experience this uncertainty. I am stressed and I will get traumatized. I said, please, you are about to get traumatized, Kiki said, with an unusual sarcasm. She only grew sarcasm when I started my teenage years. I didn't understand then how much patience she had. Kiki looked at her defined line and got visibly angry. And then she started. You are so addicted to the damn life track, showing you what to do and you will end up like a brainless like everyone else, that you can. I'm sorry. I'm going to start the sentence again. Kiki looked at her defined lifeline and got visibly angry. You are so addicted to the damn life track, showing you what to do, that you will end up brainless like everyone else that cannot make a fucking decision without looking at the life track, even if their life depended on it. I hate Sector 22, and this apartment is tiny. I hate it, I said, looking down. I couldn't look at her. I knew that I had become addicted to my life track line, showing me what to do. I couldn't remember the last time that I had decided anything without looking at the lifeline first. Kiki put her hands on her hips like when she was mad. She opened her mouth like she was about to tell me something important, but then she didn't. I knew there was something she wasn't telling me, but she always denied it. And again, she started with one of those end of the world what if situations that scared the shit out of me. Kiki, I'm going to stop being a head arborist and dealing with the death of our giant trees that give us all the oxygen we breathe, So they don't sink on the underground, killing every single survivor there was over there when the ground sinks. Then I will transfer to the lifetrack design department. Fake, I love designing people's life. So they become zombies that don't think for themselves, and they are happy when the government takes all their entropic energy out of them so they don't change. And they rather be told what to do than to make a fucking decision. Then I will work there for years and make my way up until I get to design your fucking life track. And then I will change your life design to make you a happy teenager. And you know what? Kiki asked, what? I said, I'm going to put fucking gratefulness in your fucking future so you will appreciate all you have. I was astonished at her future perfect picture, but I didn't want to show it. She was right. I was being an asshole teenager. I hate moving, I said. That's all I could say. I felt a tear pushing my eyeballs forward. Why does it hurt when a tear wants to come out of me? But I don't want it to come out. Laver said, she was about to start another freedom rant, so I pinned a smile on my face. And I'm going to stop it there. Sorry that I got nervous. This is the first time that I'm reading.
No,
to everybody.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
That was great.
It's
That's
really
an intriguing
hard.
premise.
It is. It's really hard to read online like this. So you did really
You did
well.
a beautiful job, and you sounded great. You were very clear. No, it was perfect. Your reading was lovely.
It really was. And I think it's really difficult to, not only read aloud like this to strangers effectively, but also be recorded, and also read in a language that isn't your own as well. So, you read beautifully.
And
So
I love that everybody's swearing at each other, and you've got swearing in the narration. No, that's how my brain works. I'm constantly like swearing in my own head and swearing at everything around me. No, I tone it down for the videos because I feel like I swear a lot.
I accidentally swore. So I took my beautiful niece out at the weekend. No, not the weekend. On last week, the end of last week, and she's a teenager who's obviously heard words, but she doesn't swear in front of me. And I accidentally F-bombed about 5 times the entire time that I was with her. And it came out and I was just completely like, oh God, sorry. And all the time, it was normally when I was driving. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? So, yeah. Swearing's all right. Swearing's good. Swearing, apparently, it releases endorphins and dopamine, which actually help the brain relax. And it's also a sign of intelligence as well. So there you go. So if you swear, you're all right.
All that endorsement for swearing.
Absolutely. But I really love the fact, because I know you picked out the point of the swearing, but actually just the language. Language can be spicy. It doesn't have to be sexual. It can be based on the language that's being used by the characters.
High drama.
Absolutely. Whether it's an argument that's going on between people, or whether there's a character who never swears and then suddenly lets out a big F-bomb or whatever, or even, spreading onto like the C word and other words like that, So it's a good way of exploring, sort of how characters can interact within the world that you create. So I love it. I love all of your reads. Do
you want to read a little something before the end?
Yeah, that would be cool. Hang on, let me just.
Lovely.
Got it, because you've ambushed me with this several times now, so I've got it
prepared ahead this time.
ready to go, just in case you did ambush me. All right, so this is going to be so I write dark fantasy, and I've also written children's series. I'm in the process of writing more books that kind of link with that. I'm currently on book 3 for my dark fantasy series. However, because universe that I've created is quite immersive. There's quite a lot of stuff going on. And unlike Adam, where he's kind of stayed away from all the background and historical stuff, I've got a ton of it. So what I've created is a whole anthology, which you can actually see on my website, which is just there. If you sign up as a member, which is free, you can actually read the anthology series that I'm in the process of writing. And so what I'm going to read for you today is actually part of one of the anthologies that I've written. Okay. So this is more sci-fi than dark fantasy, but it kind of it gives you an idea what's going on in the world. Malfunction. The lights blinked in the craft's cockpit, seen only by the computer and heard by none as the engine sputtered and failed as it flew through the void. The computer, an advanced AI, Security Control Application Management, or SCAM for short, programmed to see its inhabitants safe to their destination, had no choice but to alert the key staffers on board. The error occurred due to a lapse of concentration by a disgruntled technician. Despite the AI's many attempts to make the engineers aware, there was a problem. The AI's valiant effort was misinterpreted as the coffee machine needed an upgrade, and therefore they ignored the warning light. At this moment, AI decided it was no longer their job to sort out their mess, so sent the signal to the cryo chambers to wake up the important people who can actually make decisions. Besides, once they landed, the AI figured they'd completed their role and were defunct. They may as well start from now with the process of withdrawal. Commander Suki coughed and spluttered as the lid of his icebox slid back to allow the room's cool air to sink into the space, forcing him to sit upright and spit out the foul taste of fluid that he had accidentally snorted as he regained consciousness. The call from the cryosleep and the abrupt wakening brought a chill to his naked skin, and he shivered as he peered with bleary eyes around the space where several of his comrades were also stirring, scratching the ice itch from their flesh. What on earth was going on? Had they made it? He stretched as he exited the chamber and grabbed his clothes from the locker that was nestled amongst the row that lined the wall nearby. The urge to pee becoming ever more overwhelming than anything else, making his thoughts a blur of fog. Near to his pod were a vast array of other pods, each housing a serving officer of the Royal Marine Corps, each with a family they'd left behind, family they would never see again. Most of the pods remained sealed, with only those required to deal with an emergency rousing from the horrendous cryosleep. As the officers rose, they each stretched and groaned and yawned. Cryosleep was exhausting. The commander frowned as the warning siren blared. It was one of about 40 different alert sounds, each with its meaning. Which one was this? He grumbled as he struggled to figure out the cryptic noise that seemed to reverberate in his head, tugging a wayward sock over his foot. Whoever programmed SCAM had never been jarred awake from cryosleep before, and experienced the dense cloud that muddled his thoughts. At least the SCAM had woken the right people, the commander thought, with an audible sigh as he finally recognized the alert. SCAM was on the blink. Oh, what the fuck, grumbled the female officer as she sat upright on her frozen bed. Her wild bedhead hair and half-closed eyes gave her a feral appearance, one that belied her senior rank on the ship. Commander Suki hid a smile as her eyes widened after noticing he was staring at her topless form. The wraps the military issued the women were designed for modesty and comfort, but the lieutenant preferred to go without. He'd have averted his eyes if she had been any other female in the universe. I guess I should say hello, sir, the female officer said, not hiding her breasts as she clambered naked from the ice pod. The tufts of her hair under her armpits and between her legs almost glistened as the tiny crystals of ice melted. What the fuck is this all about, then? Demanded a large, burly man who stood naked, his hands on his hips and feet spread. Oi, Commander, do you know? Let him have a piss first, John, the female lieutenant responded, playfully throwing the buff soldier a towel. Ignoring the banter, the commander focused on trying to stop his bladder from bursting, whilst yanking on clothes as the siren continued to blast, making his ears long for silence. The cryolab was one of 9 large chambers that housed hundreds of military and civilian personnel, destined for a future far away from Sol. The ship was designed from the remains of a disused destroyer, decommissioned, along with the rest of the fleet, years before he had even stepped foot on it. It was the same reason the ranks had all been changed. They had no need for them. Once he had been a field marshal, once when there was a need for an army or a military. Now he was, well, he didn't really know what his role was anymore, but at least he had some semblance of a uniform. He'd do his damn duty. Was it wrong to disband the military? Perhaps the governments had been naive in our desperation, Commander Suki thought as he tugged his socks on. As he tugged his other sock on. The increased space from the lack of pulse cannons had allowed us to travel here, so perhaps it was a good thing. The large area also contained a selection of various decks within the seeds from various selection of various decks with the seeds from every species of plant and the DNA of every animal and the entirety of the British Library, some 200 million items and books, everything humankind needed to rebuild civilization. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. There we go.
I love the British interpretation. Everything we need to rebuild all of society is in the British Museum. That's it. Nothing else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I read that bit because although there's no sort of like sex or, anything else going on in that, there's quite a lot of... There's nudity and there is a little bit of sexual tension because there's not much known about the relationship between Commander Suki and the female officer who's awakened, who he's admiring the breasts of. And there's obviously some sort of history going on there, but you don't know about it at the moment. And also, things like, the ice crystals melting and glistening. I think it's quite, like a saucy image, I think. It's a bit like someone stepping out the shower naked, isn't it? And if you fancy them, it's quite nice. Quite nice. See, welcome to the Understated British. Oh no, the walls will collapse. That's okay. We'll just have a cup of tea and we'll wait it out. It'll be fine. So I thought I'd add that in because whilst we were talking at the beginning about having loads of erotica, actually doesn't have to be that to be spicy. It could be everything in between, all the way down to just having vague spice going on. But there's enough of it for you to realise that they're adults. So, so there you go. Now then, would anyone like to add any of their thoughts as a final thing before we close? No.
It's been a lovely
The
show.
other thing that I was thinking when we were talking about the spice, etc., is I've got a lot of friends who write romance, and kind of their thing with any sex scenes, if you are doing smut, is that the characters should be different at the end than they were at the beginning. Although I kind of think that also works for if you've got a scene where the characters don't change, it clearly needs some work.
That was my main complaint on the new Ant-Man movie. The first scene is exactly the same as the last scene, and there's been no growth in the whole movie. I hated it. Couldn't take it.
What's the point of that? Absolutely. That's not a story then, is it? That's
It's just a waste of
your time.
The book series that really disappointed me was the I can't remember it now. It was a trilogy with Tris. Oh my gosh,
Divergent.
That's it. Thank you. It's a Divergent series, because you've got this really awesome, powerful protagonist character, strong female lead, and I'm going to do some spoilers here. So if you haven't seen Divergent and you really want to watch the movies or you really want to read the books, I suggest you just go away now. But she dies at the end, And it's just like, what's the point? I've just invested like hours of my life in this character, and that's it. She's gone. She just sacrifices herself. For what purpose? Why? So whilst I get the fact that killing off characters is important, it needs to be done in a way that actually is going to help the story.
To me, it's the end of book 1 of the Game of Thrones when you kill off Ned Stark. While the sword is swinging, you're still expecting him somehow to get out of it.
Yes.
And then they kill him, and you're like, how can there be a book 2? And you go, oh wait, there's 1,000 other characters that he's introduced. We're not just following one person who dies, and then there's nothing else after that. Yeah. I feel you. That's very frustrating to have no story afterwards.
One of the complaints from the Mockingbird series, the Mockingjay series, the Hunger Games even, so I'll get my words out there eventually, was that the main character was kept away from the action a lot. So there was lots of stuff going on behind the scenes, but it was all very political. And whilst that's cool to have in a book, it was aimed at teenagers. And teenagers aren't really interested in political stuff, to be fair, to the majority of teens. And so you have this main character who, again, is a very strong female lead, and one of the books that inspired me to kind of start writing. However, she's kept away from pretty much most of the action. And whilst that seems okay because she's kept safe, she's not really in any actual danger. And I think if you've got an action-packed book where there is actual action going on, you don't want your character hiding in a tree or hiding in a bush, or do you know what I mean? And that's
not leadership behaviour, is it? Really?
Not really. So it kind of spoiled the series a little bit for me as well, because again, there was more hiding than leading, and less leading and less action than what it presented as. And although the premise itself was awesome, it kind of felt like there wasn't quite enough there. So, all right. So I'm just going to have a quick look through the comments. We got a few comments. Damien's been very active. Hang on a second. Let me just catch up with Damien, because Damien said a few bits here. So he said, this podcast has anything. Do you mean everything? Naked ankles, collarbones, kill your darlings, and swearing. We do. We have everything.
Give it all.
Absolutely. And then they said something else. Hang on a second. Are we going to see this one? We've got more swearing. Thank you, Adam, for your lovely comment there. That was lovely and sweet of you about the voices.
Yes, when you started doing voices, that was the best. Yeah, when you're reading along. What's going on here? That was amazing.
I think my accent changed midway through that. What that guy was saying, it started off like, I think it started off Scottish and ended up Cockney. Which, if you live in England or the UK, you know that they are very, very far away from each other. So I'm not sure what happened there.
Yeah, they don't like getting mixed up.
No. Really not. Definitely not. And then there was another one that I saw. Was that you about Adam as well, about the Douglas Adams humor? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, are you talking about the computer thinking it's a coffee error or whatever you said, and the disgruntled worker messing up? Yeah, it's so funny.
I love Douglas Adams. I love the Hitchhiker's
For those who are not book nerds, Douglas Adams wrote the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series. It's those books. That level of humor.
It's just dry. English humor is just so superb. It's just brilliant. I love it. Yeah, and it was an inspiration.
Marvin.
Yeah, my dark fantasy is very much dark fantasy with sword and sorcery and stuff, but my anthology is going to be a lot more science fiction-y based stuff with that Douglas Adams humor put in, because it's very much of an inspirational kind of style for me. Did you have something you wanted to say, Rose?
No.
You look like you're.
No, I just gotta say, Ali Lou, your background is so lovely. All the paintings.
These are my paintings. Yeah, these are my paintings.
Hang on, let's This.
Yeah.
Stunning.
Oh wow.
These are, there we go. There we go. Yeah, those are all cartoon characters.
They're so cool. They remind me of a little bit. Hang on.
Yeah, when I have 2 seconds, I paint, and then that's what I paint. Once in a while, I like to open my garage and then paint and invite the neighborhood. Like have some wine and cheeses and paint, like that kind of thing. That's what I like. Yeah, it's fun.
Wow. Art gallery.
Yeah, I live in a house that is sort of like a castle. So this kind of art makes it like fun, right? If not, it would be a museum. So it cannot be a museum. Yeah.
We're all jealous now.
Yeah.
I'm really lucky where I live. We have several sort of art shops, I suppose you could probably call it, in our town. But they act as art galleries as well. So you can just go in and you could just wander around and look at the art and walk out. They don't expect you to buy anything. And they lay it out like an art gallery as well. It's really cool. And they're like tiny little pop-up galleries. And it was quite interesting because about 6 years ago, I took my niece again, who was a lot younger, and there was this huge like 3D style painting. You know, when I'm not very good at art, but you know, artists put on thick layers of paint or clay and things and make the actual artwork itself
Three-dimensional.
textured. Yeah, there was one like that, and she was absolutely blown away by this piece of art, and it was really quite, I would say, quite highbrow art. But she was absolutely amazed. So I was quite pleased to be able to share that. So I think it's amazing what you're doing, that you're inviting people in to come and have a look at your art. That's just superb.
Yeah, then they get their own artist out of them, because then I put out supplies and then they paint and they do stuff that normally they don't do, but it's fun. People I think that another part of them comes out when they are doing painting and things that they don't usually do.
And I think that's why we do this, so that it's open to people who might be tempted to start writing but not sure where to start, have an idea about getting themselves involved in it but are feeling a bit lonely, people who are feeling a bit isolated when they're writing, people who want to have a community. It's about sharing our skills and our tools that we use, and sometimes that is just building a community of people, and that sometimes is enough to share the love and to encourage other people to do it. So yeah, I think it's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I think that part of it is to be reading out loud what we write. Like I always imagine like I'm reading it and I'm not reading it out loud. I'm reading just by reading right in my head, and it sounds so different. We need to practice more. I think I'm gonna add some reading to the painting parties because it's different.
I think that would be amazing. But also, all of the people who come on this show are always welcome to come back if they would like to. You know, we keep the show free of access, you know, free for the reader, free for the listener, because I think it's so important to have that sense of community and shared sort of togetherness, because I think that makes us better and stronger writers and readers. And you know, this is a really nice opportunity to be able to read a short snippet from your work and not only share it with the world, but also then think, oh, I need to tweak that bit, or I need to write that bit a bit better. And we've had lots of people who read first drafts on here, and it's amazing what they've written. And then afterwards, they're like, oh, you know, that wasn't very good. I needed to change this and that. And we're all like enthralled by what they've written because it's amazing. You know,
I think there's definitely a tendency for us as authors to either feel isolated, like you were saying, or to get disheartened, like we haven't had enough positive response and encouragement. And this show is all about that too. getting people together, connecting, building the community, encouraging. Because I feel more inspired after the shows, and then I want to work all week long on the stuff I'm writing, and then we get back and do another show, and I'm inspired by the people we've had. Yes, it's just this awesome little cycle happening for me.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add this to the little cycle as well, because I think it's quite sweet.
Oh, yay, Jules!
Thanks, Damien. You're very welcome. Come back. Keep commenting. Keep joining in. We love it. It's nice to share this space with not only people who are watching but also readers on here. So, okay. Adam, did you have anything else you wanted to add or say?
This has been lovely.
It has been absolutely wonderful. As a final thing, our competition has finished, and it's our judges are going to start reading. We're going to start at the end of this month, sharing it out to the judges, and they're going to read the people's writings. Oh God, I can't even get my words out now.
The very first Daniel writing competition. Yeah, no, this is exciting. We're at the end of it.
I can't even speak. Yeah, so we launched our very first competition, and it's done really well. And our judges are going to read all the work that came in. Some amazing work that has. The winners will be announced. The winners will be announced on the Danu Books website and on here, and also on social media. They will also have the opportunity to say that they are officially an award-winning author, and they also will have their work published in a book which they can purchase and also buy for their friends and family or whoever. And 15% of all the proceeds of that will be going to the Trevor Project, which, if you don't know what that is, it's an amazing support telephone charity that works with LGBTQ teens and young adults who are struggling with suicide and feelings of isolation. And I think in today's climate, it's particularly important. So so look out for that. We will let you know and keep you posted on how that's going. But the judges are going to start reading them at the end of this month. So give us time to to delegate that. But anyway, I'm going to say a massive thank you to our wonderful guests today. It's been an absolute pleasure having all of you on, and also the interaction with the comments as well. It's been fabulous. We've really enjoyed it. And so we're going to say farewell, adieu, and good night.